have the one and only Garland Nixon here. How are you doing, my man? How you doing, Garland?
Wonderful, wonderful. There we go. I was feeling kind of short there for a minute, but I think I got that straight down.
No, you're looking perfect. You're looking perfect. Looking sharp today.
Oh,
Um,
look, I got on my Steve Porkinen gave me my In the Damn
in
War
the
t-shirt.
damn
You know,
wars.
I'm
God
ready for I'm
damn
ready
right.
for
You
action.
know, the first thing in the first speech that Donald Trump gave was basically we need to stop these wars. Do you believe him on that? I mean, especially with people like Pompeo sniffing around the administration, do you believe that he's legitimate and serious about trying to put an end to these wars and not starting new ones?
You know, I do for a number of reasons. One of them I'll give is, Donald Trump is a guy who, hilarious thing. If nothing else, he's funny, right?
Yeah.
He always starts off with, nobody's ever done anything like this. Nobody's ever achieved anything like He started off, look at this movement. Nobody's ever seen anything like this, right? But in that context, one of the things Donald Trump talked about and people talked about, there was never any wars under him, right? No
Right.
new wars. We could nuance that one a bit. But
Yeah.
my point is this. I think Donald Trump took that as kind of a badge of honor. I think he took that as this is something that separates me from everybody else. There's nothing more attractive to Donald Trump than separating himself from nobody did what I did. Nobody's ever seen a guy who didn't start wars. So I think because of his emotional makeup, maybe it benefits us all because him seeing that as his flag, his badge of honor, I'm the one that didn't start wars. I think he comes in saying, watch this. Joe Biden started all the wars. He did all this. I'll end them all. And then everybody will say, Trump could do that. Nobody could do that. So anyway, you get my point.
Yeah, I look from your mouth to God's ears. Like I said, I genuinely, that was him talking about the war stuff was the one thing that I definitely wanted him to hit harder and hit more significantly. And he used to hit it in this kind of oblique way. Like he would, Kamala Harris might say something like, well, he's hanging out with dictators. Well, what you mean by that is, well, he was willing to talk to Kim Jong-un in order to bring down hostilities in North Korea, or he was willing to, pull us out of Afghanistan, or he was willing to end Obama's regime change war in Syria. That's what she means when she says that. Basically, she's attacking him for being willing to bring down hostilities, which is just outrageous. Like, the Democratic Party has fundamentally shifted on their axis. And as I was telling Scotty, like, when you go down the Democrats, for example, you get Kamala Harris saying we need to do something about Twitter because it's free speech. You get John Kerry saying we need to do something about the First Amendment because it's a problem. You get Hillary Clinton saying she wants to put people in jail for misinformation, which is just super ironic coming from a Hillary Clinton. You get Whoopi Goldberg in The View effectively saying, well, because Donald Trump won, we need to do something about social media and we need to restrain social media because, they're giving people information that is getting Trump elected. Give me your take on this. Have they just functionally gone insane on this issue of free speech because they don't necessarily have the levels of power or control anymore where they can control what people are thinking? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, a couple of things. No, the first thing is two of the things. So the first thing that you touched on, and I think it's important, and that is this business. Donald Trump talks to dictators, and he comes up with dictators, right? Okay. I think what they're really saying there is Donald Trump refuses to go with the imperial narrative, because the imperial narrative is, number one, you labeled your adversary a dictator, right? Number two, since they're a dictator, you can't talk to them. They're madmen. They're crazy. They're irrational. Therefore, so that creates a dynamic where once you say, fill in the blank, Jamarl Thomas is a dictator, I can't go on his show anymore. Right. I can't talk to him. It is a way of stopping diplomacy, blocking all diplomacy. That person's a dictator. That's another way of saying he's a demon. He's crazy. He's a madman. And Donald Trump says, be it what it is, dictator, schmictator, call him what you want. And this is logical. Yeah. We need to talk to this person. And so, and what he wants, and it's so he does something that's even worse. You label him a dictator, therefore we can't talk to him, meaning he's crazy, he's a madman. And Donald Trump says, okay, he's a dictator, he's a tough guy, and you're weak. I can talk to him. because I'm a tough guy too. So therefore, we don't need you in charge. You're too weak. To be quite frank, Donald Trump is really good. It's the Worldwide Wrestling Federation argument stuff that he used to do, the WWF, right? I'm going to take your argument and turn it inside down and hit you over the inside out, hit you over the head. He's a dictator. He's a bad guy. We can't talk to him. And Trump said, yeah, he's a bad guy, and I'm just as bad. He's a badass tough guy. Now, you're weak. You're scared of badass tough guys. I ain't, because I'm a badass tough guy, too. And I can talk to him. He'll listen to me. In fact, I respect the badass tough guy because I'm one. To a lot of, if you think about it, to the macho kind of guy is like, you know what? Yeah, I like that. You know what I mean? A lot of people now see that as some kind of a powerful leader who says, I'm tough, I'm a leader. And they're like, particularly now, because things are going to hell in every direction. Right. And so people want somebody who's going to have a steady hand on the wheel, right? So a lot of times when you say, well, we've got to have some egghead intellectual, and people are like, man, I'd rather have somebody that can put a steady hand on the wheel and charge forward. And you know what I mean? So they created a dynamic, I think, that Donald Trump was able to massage that dynamic a little bit and make him more attractive. And I forgot what the second thing you were asking about. Oh, have they lost their minds when it comes to censorship and all?
They seem to have lost their minds.
It is.
Yeah, they seem to have lost their minds. I mean, like I've never seen this assault on free speech in this way. I mean, keep in mind, it's the Biden administration that went after RT, Sputnik, that did the end run around the Constitution when they were basically trying to get Twitter in order to blacklist various people. And I imagine the same thing is taking place with YouTube, or for that matter, Facebook. Like even Nina Jankowicz with the Mary Poppins, that was going to be the Ministry of Truth. Like, this stuff is a broadside on trying to effectively control social media and the conversations that take place on social media. And I would add one last point. Under no situation would they have called anything that the government did misinformation. So if the government came out and lied, they would say, well, that is true. And anything that contradicts that lie is effectively misinformation. Like I don't think people realize how terrifying that is. But liberals think it's perfectly okay.
I think this. I think they have so ingrained into the minds of the liberal intelligentsia, as it were, the great prophets of liberalism on CNN and MSNBC and throughout academia, that it is necessary to control what the masses hear and see and say, that it has become part of their culture.
Yeah,
that they can't get out from under it because it is now part of their culture, and it has now become like a reactionary thing. There's a problem. I stubbed my toe. Oh, we got to shut somebody down. Can't talk about that. Oh, we lost a race. Oh, well, if we would just have censored more, we wouldn't have lost. Fake information's getting out. Oh, well, this bad happened. It's like now the automatic reaction to everything that goes in a way that they don't think it should go. Their reaction is always, we should have censored more. We had shut down fake news, blah, blah, blah. So much now that at first it was a tool that they use to control things. And now it's a tool that controls them, and they can't get out from under it. That's the reaction. It's amazing. They lost. The one thing they can't do is introspection. As soon as they lost, they can't look ever. The Democratic Party cannot look in the mirror and say, what did we do wrong? What do they say? This group over here, white, male, black, blue, they got to divide up into all these little groups and point out the demographic that didn't support them. But what they can never do is say, is it possible that we could have done something differently? Is it possible there could be blame there? And so create the discussion of who didn't support them and how that hurt them. Actually, as long as you're having that discussion, it's somebody else's fault.
Yep. Man, I made the exact same argument that it going with this idea that, well, we're the intellectuals. It's just misinformation, which is the reason why people are voting for somebody else. They're sexist, racist, and bigoted. It insulates you from reality, right? It insulates you from having to do any kind of real level of introspection or having an autopsy to figure out, why are we disliked? Like, how did a billionaire win the hearts of the working class, whereas the Democrats, who's supposed to be the party of unions, gets considered to be the elitists? And they have no answer for that at all. In fact, I want you to hear the way they were talking about it. This is Joy Ann Reid. Joy Ann Reid has a theory of the case. And I want you to get your take on her theory of the case. Let's see. This, and this.
Anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. She had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swift to the Swifties.
It was a historic campaign, Garland. I mean, for God's sake, she even had the Swifties. She had Queen Latifah. Queen Latifah doesn't endorse anybody. So how on earth could this flawless, historic, perfect campaign ever lose? Just fascinating, because what she's saying there basically is, well, it was a flawless campaign, which means by definition, either it was impossible for her to win, or it was something else other than the campaign, because the campaign was flawless. So it had to be a race or sex.
Yeah, what's interesting, she started off kind of with her premise about, sexism and racism and a woman president, right? That's the only conversation we can have. And then she went on to say, we did everything right. So, which means, here's the thing. If I did everything right, then it has to be your fault. It has to be fault outside of, as soon as I say I did everything right, then it has to be, somebody else's fault. It is simply a way of setting up an intellectual dynamic where the only conversation we can have is how everybody else screwed us, because it's not possible that we could have made an error. And also it kind of reminds me, I'll take it to foreign policy, to the Ukraine stuff. When the Ukraine's going bad, they say, okay, we're going to come up with a plan to present to Russia. What is the plan? Russia gives us Crimea and everything else back, and they, surrender Putin, and this whole steps down. But you know what I mean? It's one of these things that within your little group, hey, that's great. But outside of the group, everybody's looking at you like you're nuts. So it's like she's sitting in that little group, right? And she's saying, we're good, we're smart, we're perfect. And they're all going like this.
Yeah, they're shaking their heads. Yeah.
Right. Oh, we're good. We're smart. We're perfect. Blah, blah, blah. No. And now let's go give Putin this. And everybody's like, within your group, it makes sense. But outside, they're just so insular. They have lost the capacity for introspection, for honest evaluation of what they're doing. Because if they do that, they got to change. I'll add one more thing. There is one way out for the Democrats. It's 4 years away. But there's one way out that they can't possibly do. And you know what that is? Have a plain old open primary and let the people choose. Right? But this is the result of 2020. You robbed Bernie Sanders and you lost. I was a Democrat. And you ran people like me completely out of the party in 2016, right? A whole group. Then 2020, you did what you had to do, but you still robbed Bernie. You stole the Bernie. You come together on Super Tuesday and you manipulate Obama. And so a big part of this is stealing the election, the primaries from your people 2 times in a row. You got no trust, no respect, no nothing. And see, the people now, they want something different, but they have now learned that there is no possibility they can get it within their own party. So I always go back to what Malcolm X said when you ask the field slave to run away. Their life is so miserable. The answer is any place is better than here. And that's where people in the Democratic Party are. Oh my God, Dick Cheney, wars. Oh God, any place is better than here. If they were, think about it. If they were in 2028 to say, you know what, we're having open primary. Let the chips fall where they may. And the people chose, they'd have a chance, but they can't do that. Now, can they?
Well, that's the rub, right? And that's one of the other conversations that's starting to bubble up on whose fault. Like, look, personally, I think a lot of the blame lies with Kamala Harris, because if you look at it, if you're looking at the polling, She goes all the way until October with basically a 2-point lead. And then she falls off of the cliff. By the time she gets like October 20th or something like that. So she had chances. It wasn't like, it was a foregone conclusion all the way through. People were racist, sexist, and didn't give her a chance. It wasn't that. On the other side of it, there's a question about Joe Biden, that Joe Biden calls himself a transient candidate. And instead of being the transient candidate that stepped down, he decided that he was going to run again. He ends up being completely out of it and incapable of doing so, in which case Kamala Harris is thrown into the kind of the lion's den with a month or 2 months to run and start a campaign. This is without a primary, without being vetted, without them finding who's the strongest candidate, without having the kind of democratic ideals and everything else pushed out to the American public, without her even being inoculated from the worst aspects of her own campaign. So there's a question about Joe Biden. Simone Sanders brought this up. What do you think about that? I mean, granted, I guess blame could be lied in multiple places, but do you think Joe Biden is going to share, like when history looks back at this, share a large share of the responsibility for her losing this race?
Well, you know what? I take it a little broader. I hope I'm not going too broad for people, but I take it a little broader. I go back to 20. This is a policy problem. 2020, they decided we don't care. Joe Biden was a flop. Kamala Harris was a flop, but they decided we're going to do. In fact, one of the Democrats even went on CNN and said, we selected Joe Biden, not to beat Trump, but to beat Bernie, right? So at the time, remember that they didn't care if Joe Biden at the time, let's face it, in 2020, do you remember Julio Castro or whatever his name was running? And he mentioned Joe Biden's mental security issues, and they ripped him apart. And he was like, hey, guys, it's true. Come on here, right? So they knew he couldn't do it, but they did it to take out Bernie with no concern about whether or not he was a good candidate, whether or not he was capable of doing the job. Who cares? So they stick this guy in there. Then they pick Kamala Harris, who at the time had just embarrassed herself, but they're like, but she's a black female, blah, blah, blah. We'll stick her in there again. No concern for ability, knowledge, charisma, anything that would be attractive to the voters, right? They stick these people in there and then they wonder why this blows up in their face. You knew that you had people who were really bad candidates, but you didn't really care because you just wanted to beat Bernie. And then you just wanted to play this identity politics crap and you stuck them in there. I don't blame Kamala Harris. If you put Garland or Jamarl in charge of the party and they come up to us and they say, all right, we're going to make her the vice president, we look at her and we say, now you can't do that because we need somebody who's going to present a little better. Nothing. Right. We don't want to talk bad about her and all. She seems like a nice enough person, but that's not going to work. Let's look in some other direction. That's what we would do. Right. Yeah. You and I, neither one of us have like PhDs in, in political science or anything. We're just like, yeah, who's going to vote for her? That's
a bad idea. Yeah.
Right. So can I blame her if she was stuck in a position? She was chosen for a position that she was not capable to, or capable of, or should I blame the people? Let me tell you, and I don't know, you may remember when they picked her, I said, if history is any indicator, she'll come out, and the concept, and I kept saying this, the concept of Kamala Harris, an attractive woman, right? She's a minority, she's a former lawyer, blah, blah, blah. The concept of her is very attractive to voters. But the actual persona of Kamala Harris, when you hear her talk and her rhetorical capacity and things of that nature are really bad. So she's going to come out looking good, just like she did in 2020, and then she's going to bottom out quickly. That's exactly what happened. It was easily predictable here. So I don't blame her. She did what she was capable of. The people in charge had to look at that and say, yeah, I don't think we can push this one through. Even, how about this? Even her numbers as vice president indicated that she was going to get blown out. Her numbers, if you look at her numbers as vice president, those numbers say she's going to get blown out as a presidential candidate. The worst vice presidential numbers ever. Of course, she's going to get blown out. You have to say, nah, we can't do this because let's see, we may get blown out. And then they get blown out. Oh, my God. It's the fault of the voters.
Yeah. I mean, because they went around saying, well, black men weren't sufficiently loyal. I think they called black men and Hispanic men racist and misogynist.
Sure.
They blame everybody else except accepting any level of responsibility for losing. I've never seen anything like it. Like even when Hillary Clinton lost, it was blacks were insufficiently loyal. Russia got involved. Comey got involved. Iran might have been looking at us a particular way. It rained that morning. I mean, any little thing they would basically use and throw into it. I guess the question becomes now that they've lost in what seems to be a landslide, what happens to the Democratic Party? Meaning, what the hell is the Democratic Party now? Who are the leaders of the party at this point? Considering Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were not really loved, they were just placeholders. Like it wasn't like an Obama, or it wasn't like a Trump or a Bernie, where they had movements, they had things that they wanted to accomplish. This was different. These felt like just they were there. What happens to the Democratic Party now?
You know, you just like triggered a thought in my mind that makes sense. Okay. Traditional conservatism is conserve things, conserve traditions, keep things the same, right?
Yeah.
And progressivism is supposed to be change and look for something new and how can we make things better, right? But what we've just determined is that the Democratic Party is extremely conservative. And here's what I mean.
Yeah.
If you're making this argument that it wasn't our fault, we didn't do anything wrong, there's no reason to change. You shouldn't change, right? So their argument, really, the argument of the Democratic elite is it wasn't our fault. There's nothing we can do to change because these stupid voters won't do what they're supposed to do. We don't. So now, aren't they making an argument against change, a constant argument against change, to say there's nothing we can do? The voters, you know what they're going to say? Well, of course, we went too far to the left. I mean, that's a given. But they're going to say, we need to change our messaging. It's our messaging. And of course, we got to censorship more. That's a given. But we got to change our messaging because we've got to explain to the poor, stupid, ignorant, the uneducated populace out here the error of their ways and why we're better off for them and blah, blah, blah. And then we'll surely win once we get these poor, the hoi polloi out here. Once we get them to understand how great we are, well, they'll turn right around. So bottom line is the dynamic is set for them to continue to do the same. And just, it's pathetic.
Well, as you pointed out that they were going to blame the left, sharing the screen, Harris' defeat is a stinging verdict for the left. For Harris, who's no stranger to setbacks, the president election result was a devastating defeat. But notice that they're blaming the left. And by the way, they do the same thing with AOC. AOC capes for this party constantly. And yet, when the Kamala Harris thing comes up, the first thing they're going to say is, well, Kamala Harris was catering to the left, and this is not something that you could do. It's outrageous when they do this nonsense. Kamala Harris is not the left. And yet, that's the label that they put on her. And when they put that label on her, they basically try to say, well, left-wing candidates can't run, and they're bad at running.
Well, you're right. And you know, that was part of that was the game of shifting to the Cheney and all of that stuff. It was we've gone too far to the left, and now we can go out and get these Republicans. Cheney lost in a landslide. Liz Cheney lost in a landslide. So you go get a person that in her own party lost in a landslide to go attract people from her party, the party that rejected her in a landslide. Again, none of this stuff is logical, but here's part of it. One of the things that the U.S. empire has tried to do to get rid of the left is to redefine the left, right? And the Republicans go along with them. So they say, we went too far to the left. And the Republicans say, yeah, you lost because you went too far to the left. Who is the left? You redefine the left as cultural issues. The left is no longer, we think that workers should come together in unions. The left is no longer anti-war. The left is no longer, we don't trust corporations. That used to be the left. Yeah. But now the left is something about trans rights or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. You have something to do with, you know, we support women or something or whatever, right? It's not real. But this phony platitudes about Black or indigenous people of color, BIPOCs, you know, you make up stuff like that. And now you are a lefty if you like if you're like, yes, I saw a chewing gum commercial yesterday and it had a Black guy, a white guy, a Muslim, an Asian, a gay couple. You know, there's like now 50 people in a chewing gum advertisement because they're afraid they may miss one of the demographics. Instead of just like, one person shoving a piece of Doublemint in their friggin' yap.
Yeah.
They gotta have have you noticed these advertisements, this huge crowd of people,
Yeah.
and as they go person to person in the crowd, there's an Asian, there's someone has a hijab, there's this. That is now the left. As you're pro-war, as Hollywood, they're hugging, literally pinning medals on Nazis.
Yeah.
But you can still be the left. You can hug a Nazi. Used to be punch a Nazi. You can hug a Nazi and still be the left as long as you also hug a trans person. A Nazi and a trans person. In fact, they had a Nazi trans person as the spokesperson for Ukraine. Remember that person? That was the ultimate, a trans Nazi. There you go. That's Hollywood. That's Democratic Party.
By the way, they did this Martin Luther King. Like, they ignore the socialist part and they just talk about, well, he was fighting for civil rights, missing the fact that the guy was a socialist and he was pushing for increased wages and those type of things. They completely deprioritize those things. And I suspect part of the reason that the Democratic Party does that is because they're stuck with a contradiction. A, they need to get money to win elections. And B, the people that are on the left are somewhat skeptical of that money because they know that that money is effectively exerting a certain amount of control over the politics. And so from their point of view, we need to deprioritize money and finance in regards to what it means to be the left. And if we could say, well, this is about you being, white, black, gay, straight, some particular demographic, then we can focus on that demographic. We can hire somebody that's in that demographic, and we can ignore all of the economic issues and just say, this person is going to represent you. They have gotten that down to a science for the last 20, 30 years.
And what's happening is too, and this is a big part, when people are doing okay, you might get away with that.
Yeah.
But now that the material circumstances of the working class has begun to deteriorate, people are more desperate, right? And so now they got to hear something. It's like, hey, I got whatever, a wife and 2.5 kids in a minivan, and I can't afford, the normal. My kid needs new soccer cleats, and I need tires, and geez, I can't afford what I'm paying at the grocery store monthly and all of this. Okay, at that point, all of these esoteric discussions about democracy and things that I'm not even really sure what the hell it is are not as important as I got to buy tires, and I just looked at my check and I don't know how I'm going to, my tires, banana peels, and I'm going to have to use my credit card to do it. And I'm up to my ears in debt. And I don't really want to hear about democracy and, DEI, none of that stuff. I don't even want to discuss that. Who's going to do something to address the deterioration of my
situation,
economic situation? Yeah, exactly. And so they, any port in a storm. And when Trump says, at least he says it, he'll do it whether he can do it. They don't care. They're like, look, you're saying let's fight for democracy in Nagorno-Karabakh or some country.
Right.
And this guy at least says, hey, let's do something to, put a few more beans in your pocket. And this is what kills me. People have said to me, I don't know how many times, yeah, when Trump, we don't know what it's going to be like when Trump gets in office. And I'm like, well, we really kind of do.
He was president once
for 4 years. And you can look at it and say, man, that was crap there. That was crap there. That wasn't crap there. That wasn't crap there. So you can't really scare the people with Trump like you could with somebody else, because they got 4 years and they're like, if the worst I got to deal with is some mean tweets and a boneheaded thing every now and then, I can't even do a mean tweet myself now. It's censored.
Garland, man. Oh, there we are. Garland, man, I deeply appreciate you joining me, man. I always have fun with you. The audience always loves you. Garland Nixon, he is a political analyst. In fact, this bio is going to have to change. So many things have changed on this. Garland, let's just do it this way. Political analyst, great friend of the show. Where can people find you?
Just basically at Garland in on Telegram. Look me up on YouTube, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Just look up Garland Nixon. There ain't a whole lot of them. but
you have a channel also, I thought, right?
Yeah. What's that? Yeah, I got my YouTube, Rockfin, and Rumble.
Definitely check him out. Garland Nixon, man. He got me started in radio, and he has my deepest appreciation forever for that. Thank you, Garland, man. Have a good one, man.
All right.